Welcome to Module 6 of iHub Basic Navigation. In this last and final module of the 6 video modules in the iHub Basic Navigation course, you'll learn how to hide and show columns, move them around to different locations on the report, format your header and data's font, size, color, and background, and you'll also learn how to export and save the final formatted report. You should have already viewed modules 1 through 5. If you have not, please use your browser's back button to access these sections first before viewing this one. So let's continue on now with our last and final video module, Module 6 of the iHub Basic Navigation course. So as with the other video modules, I'm starting off by just logging in. Again, this is our training area, which has a red background. When you're working in the real iHub environment, you will be logging in with a blue background. So I am going to go ahead and log in using my Student 4 credentials. Again, this is what you're going to be using when you do your class exercises. I am going to go ahead and get into the folder we've been working in, our Patrick O'Brien folder. I'm going to click in that. And I am going to go and get into the report that we've been working in previously, this expenditure GL detail by budget TC 1.4.18. And just as I did with the other areas we've been working in before, I'm just going to go ahead and run the report as it is. I'm not going to change any parameters. So I'm going to click on this Finish button because we just want to run the report as it exists and see what happens with that. So one of the things that we want to do right now is we want to go ahead and move on to taking a look at our ordering our columns and how we do that. So what we want to do is sometimes we take a look at the way that our report is, and we decide that we want to go ahead and move some of these columns around to different locations. And so what we're going to do here for our first exercise here is we want to go ahead and take this appropriation unit column that we see here, and we actually want to move this to a different location on the report. We want to move it around. So what we're going to do is we are going to move this column. We're going to take and use that three-dot menu to actually move that around to a different location. So when I use that three-dot menu here, I am going to go to the column area, and you can see that I have an option here to move it to the right. So I'm going to go ahead and select that because that is one way we can move it over. We can move that to the right. Now the same way we moved it to the right, we can move it to the left. So if I select that column, I do the three-dot menu, I go down to the column area, and then I have now an option to move it to the right or the left. So let's go ahead and move it to the left. So you can see that we can move that column by using a move right, move left option that's on there. But what happens if I actually want to hide a column? Let's go ahead and say that I want to hide this appropriation column. I'm going to click on that column. I'm going to select the three-dot menu, and I am going to go to that column area again. And this time you can see I have an option for hide column or show column. So let's go ahead and select hide column. And as you can see, now our appropriations column is gone. Now, if you've ever worked in Excel, you know that sometimes it can be frustrating because you can hide a column, and then when you have to go find it again, you have to figure out exactly where it's at in order to unhide it. Well, here in iHub, it makes it super easy because you can click on any column. And so I'm just going to pick a random column. I'm going to pick this one right here. And if I use that same three-dot menu, and I go back to column, exactly where I was at before, and I have that option again to hide the column, but I also have this option to show a column. I'm going to select Show Column. what happens is it doesn't matter what column you selected, it's going to tell you all of the columns that are hidden. So as you can see here, the only hidden column right now is that appropriations column that we hid before. So I'm going to select that, and it's saying I'm going to show that column. I want to show the appropriations column, and I'm going to select OK. Again, if I had multiple columns on there, I could actually, that were hidden, I could just pick whichever one I want out of the list. But again, I only have one, so I selected that, and I'm going to hit OK. Now you can see that my appropriations column showed back up. So that is how you use the hide and the unhide column aspect of your three-dot menu in the column area. There is another area here. What if we wanted to delete that column? What if we said we don't even want to hide it, we just want to get rid of it? We can use that three-dot column or three-dot menu, and we can scroll down to column. And again, we saw what happened when we have a hide, we have a show, but we also have a delete column, and I'm going to select that just to show you what happens. Just like everything else in iHub, whenever you go to delete something, it's going to give you a confirmation box just to make sure that you're not making an accidental deletion. And it says, are you sure you want to delete this column? And my answer is no, I don't want to delete it. So again, this is how you would delete the column. Let's go ahead and click on this GLED dollar amount area because I am going to show you a function right now that's on that column area as well. If we click on the three-dot menu and we go back to that column area, and remember we just covered hide, show, and delete, but the fourth item on this menu is a new computed column. We're going to go ahead and click this one right now. What happens here is that you see there is a dialog box that shows up. This area is going to allow you to place a new column next to the one that you selected. Now, keeping in mind we selected the dollar amount column. So now we're going to have a new column that's going to be right next to that, and it will compute, it will do a computation based on your criteria using the data that's in your column that you selected. So when you do this, you have to put a column label on there, but you can do all sorts of computations. You can do comparison computations, financial computations, text, math, or date and time. So what we're going to do right here is we have our dollar amount figure that we have listed here, but what we want to do with this is we want to create a running sum. So we want to be able to keep tabs on how much throughout, as each time we have a certain transaction that's added to this report, we want to keep tally on what the running sum is that we've spent in this particular area. So what we can do here is, first of all, we need to create a column label. Well, remember, we're doing a running sum. So let's go ahead and entitle this column running sum. Then for the category, we have those different areas that we can select. We have comparison, financial, text, math, date, and time. Well, we're going to do a financial computation. So let's click on financial. You can see that once we've selected one of those different categories, there's going to be a couple different functions you can do in the categories. And in this case, we have advanced, we have percentage of difference, and we have our running sum. So I'm going to select running sum. And this is going to calculate the running totals for the selected column at the specified base group level. So when it's asking me what column I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and click that drop-down menu, and I'm going to say I want to do a running sum on the dollar amount column, because I have the dollar amount column here. And we're going to go ahead and select OK. And now what you can see is that as you can see this first amount, 1,258, it's showing up over here in the running sum. And as we start to add different things, different transactions, your sum is starting to go up accordingly. So you have a running sum of what these transactions are. So this is how you create a running sum, or a new computed column. And again, we're just placing a new column in there that's going to do a computation. You certainly can do this in your own agency. You can explore this a lot more in your office, but this is one option to add a calculation into your final report if you needed to be able to calculate a particular something in there. So, but again, you can explore this a lot more in your office. You can see as we scroll to page 5 that our running sum has been going up, 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 and it finally gets to this $184,583 amount, which you can see we have a built-in aggregation there, and it's showing that right there. So that is one option right there for you to be able to do a running sum. Now let's go ahead and move on back. We're going to move back to page 1. We're going to go back to that appropriation column, because now that you have seen this, what we want to do, we saw how we could move that column to the right. We saw how we could move it to the left. There's actually another option on here that's going to make this a lot easier instead of moving it one by one right or left. So we can use that 3-dot menu, and we can go down to our column area. Remember, we saw hide, show, delete, new computed column. We have the move to the right. We already took a look at that. But we have this function called reorder columns. We can click on reorder columns. What that is going to do is it's going to show you the order that your columns are in right now. And of course, our first column is appropriation. Our second is doc number and transaction code. And you can see appropriation, doc number, transaction code. This will allow us to actually place that column wherever we want it to go. So in this case, let's say that we wanted to move that column in between accounting year and fund code. So let's say we want it right in between these guys right here. So what we can do is we just make sure it's selected, because again, you can click on any of these to move them around. But we're going to take that appropriation one, and we are going to use these arrows right here to place it in between accounting year and fund code. So let's go ahead and drop it down. We're going to keep moving it down and down and down. And of course, when we get to the bottom of the list, we need to use our scroll bar here to get down a little bit further. We're going to hit that arrow down and down. And now we have accounting year. We're almost there. We're going to move it in between accounting year and fund code. Again, we wanted it between this one and that one. We're going to select OK. What that did is it took that appropriation column from here and it moved it all the way here in between accounting year and fund code. So that is another way for you to actually quite much more easier than moving it to the right, moving it to the right, moving it to the right. You can certainly use that that reorder columns to put your columns in the proper order that you want. And again, you can do that with all of the columns. You could simply look at that list and move them around until you have them in the order that you want it. One other way to do it that's easy, especially if you're only moving a couple columns around, is you can do a drag and drop as well. So let's say we wanted that appropriations column. Let's say we actually wanted it at the very end in between our object code and our vendor name. We can just select the column and we can drag and drop it. So I'm using my mouse to drag it over here until you see that blue arrow is telling us it's in between object and vendor name, and now I'm going to release it. And so now I have my appropriation column in between object and vendor name, and I just did it by dragging and dropping. Selecting it, dragging, and dropping. And there you go. So that is another way for you to reorder your columns, especially if you only have a couple of them that you need to reorder. All right, let's go ahead and click on this document number area here. I'm going to show you what happens. There's another selection that's on that column menu, and I'm going to select that 3-dot menu up here. I'm going to go to column. We covered hide, show, delete, new computed column, move to the right. We did a reorder column, but there's this very last one here on our list, which is do not repeat values. If we select this, it's going to remove repeating values to make it easier for us to see when these values change. So if you take a look at those document numbers, you can see, especially we have document number 610 is our very first one. You can see that right here. And then 601 has a lot of repeating 601s. I'm going to show you what happens when we do a three-dot menu column. We're going to go all the way to do not repeat values. We're going to select that. And now you can see all the repeating values were removed. So all of these documents have the document number 601. It's just we're not repeating them. And we're doing it so that we can much more easily see when there's a change in the values. And again, that's a way to do it. If you wanted to put it back, you would do the exact same thing, three-dot menu, column. But what happens is it now changed it to repeat values. The system knows that you already did the do not repeat values, and it now intuitively knows when you go back there again that you want to repeat values, you want to put back in there. We're not going to do that right now. We're just going to leave them on there like that, but I definitely wanted to show you what happens when you use that area. So now that we know how to do a lot of these different variations with your columns, move them around, hide them, take away repeating values, do a new computed column with it. Let's go ahead and move on to actually formatting our report and making sure that if we want our headers to be a little clearer, that we can do that. If we want our data, maybe we don't like the way that this running sum is. We've got all these obnoxious decimal places here. Maybe we want to remove it. Maybe we don't like having the date and the time. We just want the date. There are certain things that we can do to format our data and format the way it looks. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to click on this dollar amount column. So when I take a look at this report, one of the things that I don't like about this report is that it's using very technical terms for the headers. So it's using the term GLED dollar amount. Well, what if I just want to make that simple and I want it to just say amount? I can actually change that using this three-dot menu, and the very first item on there is header. So when I go to this header area, it's going to be all things related to the header. So the first thing I want to do is look at the very first option on here, and it says that I can change the text. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Change Text. When I do, it highlights the text. I don't have to do anything else. I don't have to click in there. I don't have to do anything. I can just type, and I can type the word amount, and that's what I'm going to do right now. Now, if I hit my Enter button, because it's going to be tempting to do that, I'm going to show you what happens when you do. I just hit the Enter button and now it disappeared. But I'm using my arrow keys to show you that when I hit the arrow key up, there's amount. When I hit it down, it's blank. What I did is I added a second line to the header. And so you don't really want to do that. You just want to type it in. And when you get done typing, just click on a different column like that. And it will actually take and make that change that you had. So that is how you're going to change your header titles. But what if we want to change the alignment of our header? If you notice, all of our headers are centered. Doc number, transaction code, running sum, line description, these are all centered. What if I want my header to be aligned to the right or left? Let's go ahead and click on the doc number column. We're going to go on that three-dot menu and we're going to go back to header. And we have an option right below change text. We have the option of alignment. So let's go ahead and move this one over to the left. So I'm going to select left. And as you can see, my document number is no longer centered. The header is no longer centered. It now moved over to the left. Now again, this only applies to the header. We have a different way to format your data. So if you don't like that this JV is listed here, we can actually move that a different way as well, and we'll go over that in just a moment. But for now, that is how you can change the alignment of your header. Again, you select it, you click on the three-dot menu, header, alignment, and you can choose how you want that header to look. All right, as far as another type of formatting that we might want, what if we want our header to stand out? Because right now it's all blending together, but what if we want a particular column header to stand out? Let's click on that amount area, because that's an important area that we might be tracking, and we might need a visual clue to have that stand out a little bit better. We're going to click on that three-dot menu, header again, and this time we're going to go past all of these options. We're going to go down to the bottom and click on font. Now for the font, what this is going to allow us to do is change our font that's just related to the header. So we really want this to stand out above and beyond everything else. So I'm going to go ahead and change that font to a different font. I'm going to change it to Fantasy. I'm going to make it a really large font so that I can clearly see it. I'm going to change it to 16. And then I'm going to take and use the drop-down menu here, and I'm going to make it bright pink. We're going to select bright pink. And then I want a yellow background. And you can see that as you start selecting these different areas, you can see what it's going to look like once you have the completed product. So that background color, we're going to pick yellow. And you can see this is what it's going to look like. You have a preview. And just to be super obnoxious, let's go ahead and underline it so that you can really see what this header is. And so we are going to go ahead and click OK on that. And now what you can see is that on that column, the column you selected, you just made the background yellow, the font pink, you made it a different font, and you made it a different font size. So as you can see, this column is now really going to stand out because you have all of this here. But let's take a look really quick and see what happens. So as far as the header, we've pretty much covered everything. We took a look at that three-dot menu header. We changed the text, we changed the alignment, and we changed the font. But what happens if you want to make changes to your data that's sitting right here? Well, we have a couple different ways to do that. Let's go ahead and click on the GLED transaction code. We're going to use that three-dot menu, and this time instead of going to header, we are actually going to go down here to this section right here, which is our alignment and format. This really has to do with our data area. So with the alignment, whenever we select alignment, we have a choice to align both the data and the header either right, left, or center. So for this column, what we want to do, it's sitting over on the left. What we want to do is we want to move everything to the right. So I'm going to click right, alignment right, and that's going to move both the header and the data to the right alignment. So again, everything is now aligned to the right. So that is how you would make any kind of alignment changes in your report that has to do with both the header and the data. So let's go ahead and click on that amount column again. What we're going to do this time, as far as the formatting goes, is that we want to make sure on this particular one, we like that our header is standing out, but we also want our data to stand out as well. So we're going to use that three-dot menu, and instead of going to header, because we already took care of our header, we are actually going to go all the way down. We're going to go past alignment because we're not dealing with alignment. We're dealing with the data format. And so we're going to go down to your three-dot menu and then format. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move to font. When we select font, we can we have a choice. We can either make our formatting changes apply to the column, or we can apply it to the entire table. So we could do it either way. In this exercise, I'm just going to go ahead and apply it to the column because that's the only one I really want to stand out. And so for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and change that font to cursive. because I want it to stand out. I'm going to change the size to 12. And then I am going to take the background color and I'm going to make it a light gray. And at this point in time, again, it's only going to be applied to the column, but I could apply this to the whole table, but I'm only going to apply it to the column. And I'm going to select OK. And now you can see all the data that was in that column has now been formatted with that gray background, the different font and the different font size and all that. So this is how you can format your data so that it looks a little different, or it stands out, has a different background color. So for this one, what we want to do next, we want to, we really like the way that this header looks. We like the way that our column data looks. And this really stands out, and I'm very super excited about the way this stands out. But maybe I also want my document numbers to stand out, and I also want my object codes to stand out. So I can actually take the formatting that I put on this particular column and I can place it on document number and object number. And so this is how you would do that. You're going to take the column that you have applied that certain formatting to, and you're going to use that three-dot menu, and you're going to go down to the bottom here in the format area where we were just at. And you know, we covered the font, we were just in that area, but we can copy the style of this. So we're going to select copy style. Now once we select copy style, we have this dialog box that opens up, and it asks you, well, which columns do you want to put this particular formatting on? Well, we already know we want it on the document number and the object. So I'm going to select document number, and then I'm going to scroll down here to object. And if I hit the control key on my keyboard, I can select more than one column at once. So I'm going to hit the control key and I'm going to click on object. And now I can scroll up and see that I have document number selected and I have object number selected, and I can click on the OK button. Now you see that I have the same formatting I put on that amount column is now applied to the document number column and the object column. So that is how you can copy that formatting for a particular column, and you can apply it to multiple columns. So that is another way for you to be able to take certain formatting that you like and apply it to other areas of your document. So now let's take a look. Now that you know how to make it all pretty in different colors and fonts and things like that, let's go ahead and address some of the areas in our report that we decided we really didn't like from before. One area that we didn't like was we didn't like on this running sum that it had so many decimal places, so we need to fix that. On this amount column, we want to make it clear that this is money, this is dollars. So we do need to format that for currency, and we also need to do the same thing on the running sum. We want to make sure that everybody knows this is currency. We also don't really like this acceptance date having the time with it, so we need to go ahead and simplify that acceptance date and make it a little cleaner. And then I'll show you one other little formatting tip as well. So let's go ahead and click on that amount column first. And what we're going to do to fix this to make it currency is we are going to use that three-dot menu. We're going to go down to Format. And remember, we just did font, we did copy style. We already did, we're going to skip past the conditional formatting. We're going to go to Format Data. So Format Data is going to be really important whenever you're going to change how you want the data to present itself. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Format Data. When I do, the program intuitively takes a look at what's in that data, what type of data it is. And in this case, it's got decimals, and so it knows that there might be a couple options that you're looking for. So it asks, what do you want to format that number as? And it defaults to custom, but when we use the drop-down menu, You can use unformatted, general number, currency, fixed, percentage, scientific, and custom. Let's go ahead and select currency. Now, once we do that, it's going to default to a couple things that are common. It defaulted to the $sign, but certainly if we're using any other kind of currency, we can change it. Symbol position, it assumes you want it before the number, but you could actually put it after the number if you wanted. Decimal places, it assumes you want 2 decimal places, but if you didn't want any decimal places at all, if you wanted it rounded up, you could get rid of them just by clicking on 0 to have no decimal places. But we're going to leave it on 2. The other thing that it asks is, do you want to use the thousand separator? And it automatically defaults to say, yes, we want to do that. But if you take a look at your numbers here, let's look at this $11,000 amount. The thousand separator is actually this comma that's in here. And so I'm going to go ahead and deselect that because I want to remove the comma. And then as far as negative numbers, it defaults to using the negative sign, but we can use parentheses as well. And I'm going to select the parentheses for my negative numbers. And I'm going to click OK. And now you can see that my amount column got rid of the commas. It's at 11,000. There's no more commas. It put the $sign on there. And any negative numbers, we're going to scroll a couple pages to find some negative numbers here. We have negative numbers that are showing up in parentheses. I have a little bit better one here. There's a couple other parentheses as well. That's our negative numbers. So we reformatted that data to look the way we want it to and present itself the way we want it to. So we fixed that. Let's go ahead and fix the running sum area. Now again, we want that to be $signs, and we want to remove all of these massive amount of decimal places. So let's click on running sum. We're going to do the 3-dot menu. We're going to scroll down to format. We're going to go to format data, because again, that's what we're trying to format. We're clicking on that. And once we get here, it doesn't quite know what you want because this could be any number of things. So we're going to use the drop-down menu and we're going to tell it we want currency. Now once we've established its currency, it gives all those default options like it had before. But let's say we're okay with all of these. We're perfectly fine with that, and we're going to hit OK. And now our running sum column has a $sign, and it has 2 decimals instead of a whole bunch of decimals like it had before. So we cleaned that up pretty good. And now let's take a look at the acceptance date. This one's showing all of the, not only the date, but the time. And we don't want it to look like that. We want to simplify it, make it look a lot cleaner. So let's go up to that 3-dot menu again. We're going to move all the way down to format. And we're going to go back to that format data, just like we did before. And this time, again, it does know it's a date time. So you can see that each time you click on a different column, it's going to take a look at that data and it's going to try to figure out what it is. It defaults to unformatted, but when we use the drop-down menu, now our drop-down menu has a bunch of different options compared to the last time we used it. It's because the system figures out this looks like a date, and it looks like a date and time, so we're going to give a bunch of options to format that date and time. Well, I want it really, really simple and concise, so I'm going to move it to the simple 10/22/19 format. I'm going to select that one and hit OK. Now remember, take a look. We've got date, and full time. I want it to look like this. I'm going to select OK. And now all of a sudden my data has now just shortened up and it's a lot more concise. So I certainly cleaned that one up. I do want to show you one other area that can be very beneficial. When you are dealing with any kind of text. So I'm going to use the line description, for example. Sometimes in your report, maybe you have somebody who's typed in all caps. Sometimes they've typed in lowercase or mixed case. You certainly can format that as well. And I'm going to scroll to the next page so you can see. We have all caps on here, but I'll show you what happens when you use that format data. Again, it's pretty intuitive trying to figure out what you want. But in this case, we use the 3-dot menu, We go to Format, Format Data, and it's gonna ask you what it is. It can't quite figure out what you want, but when you use your drop-down menu, it's going to say, do you want this uppercase, lowercase, or custom? Well, I'm gonna select lowercase just because I want to demonstrate to you what it's gonna look like. So I'm clicking on lowercase, and now take a look again. All of these are caps. When I hit OK, it just made them all lowercase. So this is a really important thing because certainly you can do a lot of different formatting with each column depending on what the column data is, and it's pretty intuitive in trying to figure out what kind of formatting you want. So that can be really beneficial. So one more thing I'm going to do really quick here is I am going to take a look. We're going to do an aggregation. I'm going to do a little bit of a refresher aggregation because I do want to show you just simply what happens when we export this out, because at this point in time we love our report, we love our formatting. Certainly the columns that we wanted to stand out are definitely standing out. And so we really, really like the way that we formatted this report, and we want it to stay this way for, both in terms of the report that we present to others in an Excel spreadsheet perhaps, but also maybe we want our report to always look like this. So I'm going to show you a couple different things. But before I do, I'm going to do a little bit of a refresher on the aggregation. What I'm going to do is, remember earlier in one of our modules, we did an aggregation to tell us how many document numbers were in there. And so I'm going to click on this column again, and I'm going to put that same aggregation back on. I'm going to go to the three-dot menu. I'm going to go to aggregation. And again, remember, it intuitively knows we want to count. I'm going to leave it on the table level. I'm going to put it on the footer. And I'm going to give it a different label called number of docs. I'm going to format that so it stands out by giving it just a purple background, just to be really quick, and make it bold. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and click the OK button. Oops. And as you can see, in the training environment, sometimes we do have a little bit of our glitchiness here. It did go ahead and make all of the columns purple. But one of the things that I do want you to notice above and beyond all that is, let's go ahead and move to that last page right here. And we're going to go ahead. I'm going to try one more time just to see if we can get that count put on there. And it could be because I already removed those. So let's go ahead. We'll just put a basic count on this one right here. I'm going to go ahead and do an aggregation. I'm going to do a count at the footer, and I'm going to say number of codes. We'll just say number of codes. And we're just going to do a basic aggregation. I'm not even going to format, just to be on the safe side. Let's go ahead and click OK. And now you can see, remember, our 172 number of codes was there. All right, so for demonstration purposes, I wanted to make sure that you were aware of the fact that when we go and we're happy with our report, what happens when we export this out to Excel? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to export the content. Now I have two different ways to do it. I can use the pancake menu here, and I can export the content this way. But I can also use the three-dot menu. I'm going to go back to that amount column. I'm going to use the three-dot menu there. I'm going to go to the very last item on here, which is export content. No matter which way you go, if you use the pancake menu or if you use this option right here, it's going to take you to the same place. So I'm going to click on export content. So at this point in time, it is asking you what kind of export format do you want, and it defaults to Excel. So I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, that's exactly what I want. I want this to an Excel spreadsheet. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. It's going to ask me how I want it to open. I'm going to click OK because it's opening in Excel. That's what I want it to do. And then what you're going to see is that the report now has downloaded. I've exported it, but it kept all of the formatting that I put on it. So not only did I format my my other report, my view-only report, but I just formatted my Excel version of this as well. And so you can see it kept all of the same formatting. It changed that font. It kept that purple that we originally had. We didn't intend on having, but it applied it that way. And then we have the other thing that it did here, and remember, when we do an export content and we do it in that way instead of selecting individual columns, it does keep that aggregation right there. It keeps the formula of how you got that aggregation. And again, this is something Discoverer did not do before. If I click on this one right here for 172, it tells us we did a count function and it gives the range of the count. So that is one benefit of using that export content, because not only when you're done with the report it'll keep all that formatting, and we never had to get into Excel at all. We could format this whole entire thing with pretty colors and aggregations and everything, and it's going to export it just as we did it directly. It's going to take it into Excel and just make it so that somebody else can see it, including, like I said, including those some, the formulas that we use to get our aggregations. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of this Excel spreadsheet. So again, what if I want to run this report and I want to keep all this formatting? Well, if I were to close out of this report right now, when I go to reopen it, and as we've done a couple different times, it will start from scratch, which means all of your formatting will be lost, unless you do a save as. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to that pancake menu, and we're going to scroll down here to save as. Now I'm going to select save as right now, and it's going to open up this area and ask me, where do I want to save it? Well, this is one area of the training environment that's a little bit of a glitch, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not quite sure in the live environment if it does it. I do not believe it does. But if you do open this dialog box and it's blank, just go ahead and hit cancel. Go back to that pancake menu and do a save as, again, a second time, and it will populate the second time. So if you do a save as and you don't see anything in there, don't worry, just cancel out of it and do it again. It'll be there the second time. So it's going to ask me, where do I want to save this at? Well, I do want to save it in my folder, my Patrick O'Brien folder. So I click on it, but don't click on it once, you have to click on it twice. So I'm going to double click it. Double click, and then it's going to allow me to save it in there. I only have one other of these BERT design documents in here, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save this as Patrick P. O'Brien dash, and I'm going to put final report, and I'm going to select OK. So at this point in time, I did a save as, and I saved this report in my folder with the formatting. So how do I know that? Well, let's close out of this. I'm going to go ahead and close out of it. Now remember, I originally was working in this expenditure GL detail by budget report. If I click on this and I run it, I do a finish, look what happens. All my formatting is gone, right? But luckily I did a save as. I saved as and I kept the formatting. I'm going to go ahead and close out of this one, and I'm going to go to the report that I just saved as. So as you can see right here, it's not showing up, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that we have to refresh our screen. So we're going to hit that F5 button on our keyboard to refresh it, because again, if you don't see it the first time, just hit refresh. And now you can see I have my file, P. O'Brien Final Report. That's the one I just created. I'm going to go ahead and select that one. And you see I have the exact same parameter area that opens up just like the other report did. I'm going to hit finish. And now look, all of my formatting stayed on this report. And that's because I did a save as. And so now I have a report that's always going to run with this formatting. So that is how you do, first, to export it with all of that pretty formatting that you did, with your dollar signs on there, and you got rid of all the decimals, and your acceptance date looks good, and you have all that in order. You can always export that out into your Excel spreadsheet, but certainly if you do a save as, it will always save that report with the formatting. And then you can add it, and again, just keeping in mind, if data is being entered and you're monitoring something on a daily basis, your report can always have this formatting on it. It'll just update as needed depending on what parameters you put on there. So again, and just for an example, I'm gonna go back one. I'm gonna make this 5999. I'm gonna make that June date 6/30 of 2019. So I'm putting totally different parameters in. I'm finishing it. But look, the formatting's the same. I have a 39-page document now, and all of the formatting is the same. So that is how you do a save as. So with that being said, you have learned everything that you need to learn about your basic navigation in iHub. You have learned how to open up the reports, use the parameters. You have learned how to sort that data, group it. You've learned how to format the data, make sure that the currency has dollar signs, things like that. There's all sorts of things that you've learned in all 6 of these video modules. So one of the things that I want to make sure to point out as we wrap up this course is to go back to your agency at this point after your training. One of the biggest concerns, as I mentioned before, is that there's this thought out here, well, I used to be able to create my own reports as I like them, and now I have to work in sort of an existing report. I can't necessarily create my own at my own whim. Well, I would challenge you to do this. Take a look at all of the Discovery reports that you have currently running and jot down what fields are you always asking for. Are you always asking for the amount? Are you always asking for the fund code? Are you always asking for jobs? And sometimes you're asking for different things in different reports. But my challenge to you would be to list all of them and then request a report that gives you everything you need. And if there's a certain parameter that you're always going to need, such as a date range, that's a very common parameter, then make sure that you have your report built with a parameter that allows a date range. If you're always doing object codes or budget account ranges, or make sure you build that into the parameters so that you have that flexibility. But certainly if you had the most boring report out there with just date ranges, but you had all of these different fields up here, and all you did was put filters on them, certainly you can take a massive amount of information, you compare it down to just what you need, and then you can have your report do exactly what you need it to do. So my challenge to you would be to not be rattled by the fact that you can't go out just building your own report. It would be more to identify what fields you use the most, and go ahead and if it doesn't already exist in your agency, build a report that has everything your agency needs. Maybe you have 7 things that you need, and your coworker has 5 of the same things, but they have 2 other things they need. Build a report that has all of those in it, and then just use your filter buttons to filter out what you don't need, and then your coworker can use filter buttons to filter out what they don't need. So this is my challenge to you in working in iHub is, think outside the box of what your reports are existing, and think outside of the box of how you can create a report that can give you everything you need, and just use your filter buttons to get you pared down for different reasons that you may need different reports. So with that being said, this is your final final video module, module 6, we'll go ahead and complete it. I do want to remind you that you need to fill out all of the exercises. You need to complete all 25 exercises. That is a downloadable sheet that you can print out, and you will be logging into the testing environment, and you will be creating your own you'll be doing your own exercises in the testing environment. You do have to save those files in there, so those will be checked. And then you will also use those exercises, because there's a few answers that you're going to write down, and you're going to take and put those into the exam, and you're going to take the exam. You do need to have a 75% or better to pass the course, and so you're going to need to do that. I am going to show you really quick. We're going to go ahead and minimize this. You have, congratulations, you've completed the navigation, the iHub basic navigation video modules. So at this point in time, what you need to do is use your browser's back button to return to the NVE Learn and complete the exercises first, as we just talked about, and then complete the exam for class credit. And to access the exam, you are going to have to click on it, and you're going to have to enter a key code when prompted. So what I want you to do right now is to take a look at this key code that's listed here, write it down right now, and then when you go to access your exam, you're gonna put this number in as your key code in order to get into the exam. Again, and I'll just go ahead and list this off for you. It's lowercase u, 3, lowercase f as in Frank, lowercase y, 8, 3, 5, and lowercase d. This is your key code to get you into the exam so that you can put your answers in there. So with that being said, good luck on your exercises in your exam, and thank you again for taking the class.